Fyodor Dostoevsky was a 19th century novelist and philosopher considered by many to be one of the most influential authors in all of world literature. Born in 1821, he lived through things most of us only read about. He was arrested for speaking against the government, lined up before a firing squad, only to be pardoned at the last second. Then came years in Siberia, living in brutal conditions among criminals, cut off from the world. But in that cold, lonely place, something in him changed. He lost almost everything, yet somehow he discovered something deeper, what it really means to be human. Reading Dostoevsky doesn't feel like reading a story. It feels like being exposed. His books, Crime and Punishment, The Brothers Karamazov, Notes from the Underground, The Idiot, they don't just tell you what happens, they ask you who you are. They dig into the questions we usually avoid. What does it actually mean to be a good person? Not in theory, but in real life. Can love really survive when the world keeps breaking your heart? And is being rational always a good thing? Or is it part of the problem? Dostoevsky doesn't give easy answers. He doesn't care about appearances or success. He wants you to feel, to think, to wrestle with your own soul. And in a world where being fake often looks like strength, he shows us a different path. One that's harder, but more real. So, here are 4 daring ways to be real in a fake world, drawn from the wisdom of Dostoevsky. Number 1. Dare to be innocent in a world that worships image. Dostoevsky says, "The gentle heart is an idiot." Fyodor Dostoevsky's The Idiot introduces us to Prince Mishkin, a man who, on the surface, seems completely unfit for the world he lives in. After years in a Swiss clinic for epilepsy, Mishkin returns to Russian high society, but he's unlike anyone else. He's gentle, open-hearted, forgiving, and incapable of deceit. He doesn't posture or manipulate to get ahead. He listens deeply, speaks honestly, and looks at people with genuine compassion, something so rare it almost feels foreign. But here's the catch. Instead of being admired for his goodness, he's mocked. In a society where strength is often measured by status, ego, and cunning, Mishkin's innocence is seen as stupidity. People take advantage of him, laugh at him, and eventually cast him aside. It's tragic, but Dostoevsky uses this tragedy to ask a deeper question. In a world that's morally upside down, what if being an idiot is actually the wisest, most courageous thing you can be? Regrettably, we're still living in an upside-down world. Show kindness and you're seen as weak. Offer forgiveness and they call you naive. We reward charm over character and snappy comebacks over a quiet conscience. Vulnerability? It's mistaken for a flaw. Just scroll through social media. The loudest voices get the spotlight, not the most truthful. Harshness is branded as being real, while gentleness is often dismissed as softness. We're taught to compete, to guard ourselves, to always stay one move ahead. And sure, that has its place. But when self-protection comes at the cost of empathy, sincerity, and love, we all lose something vital. We chase control and dominance only to end up more guarded, more transactional. Prince Mishkin reminds us that there's another way, a harder way. To choose goodness even when it costs you. To love without guarantees. To forgive even when you're not asked to. These choices often make no sense in a calculating world. They might even make you look foolish. But they might also make you free. Free from the endless need to prove, to compete, to dominate. Dostoevsky wasn't just telling a story. He was holding up a mirror. In a world gone cold, being innocent, being kind and compassionate is the bravest act of all. Maybe true strength isn't about being the sharpest in the room. Maybe it's about keeping your heart open when everything around you says to close it off. Mishkin is Dostoevsky's modern Christ figure because he embodies radical compassion. Like Christ, he walks into a corrupt society not with weapons or strategy, but with an open heart. And just like Christ, he's betrayed, misunderstood, and ultimately cast aside. So, Dostoevsky is reminding us that true goodness, Christ-like goodness, will rarely be rewarded by the world, but it might be the only path that keeps your soul whole. Through Prince Mishkin, Dostoevsky invites us to do something most people have forgotten how to do: to stay innocent. Not naive or clueless, but innocent in the way we look at the world. To keep our hearts open, to care even when it hurts, to stay soft in a world that keeps trying to harden us. Mishkin doesn't try to impress anyone. He doesn't pretend or play games. He's just himself, honest, gentle, and full of empathy. And precisely because of that very thing, people think he's weak. But maybe that's not weakness at all. Maybe it takes real strength to be innocent when the world is anything but. The truth is, when you stop pretending, when you stop trying to be what everyone else expects, you might not always win, but you stop losing yourself. You stop feeling like a stranger in your own skin. And that kind of peace, even if it makes you stand out or feel alone, is worth more than any applause or approval. Think about someone you know who's genuinely kind. Not for attention, not for likes, just because that's who they are. That might not be the most successful or popular person you know, but something about them sticks with you. That's what Dostoevsky was trying to show us through Mishkin. So yeah, maybe being kind and innocent can make you look like a fool sometimes. But in Dostoevsky's eyes, that so-called fool might be the only one who's actually living with his soul intact. So real innocence doesn't need an audience. It doesn't try to look good. It just is good. And in a world that's all about showing off, that kind of quiet goodness, it's rare. And it's powerful. And maybe that's the kind of soul the world desperately needs right now. Number 2. Dare to accept your messy, irrational self. In the words of Dostoevsky, man is sometimes extraordinarily, passionately in love with suffering. There is some enjoyment in the actual suffering. In Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground, the protagonist is the anonymous narrator, often referred to as the underground man, and is one of the most honest, uncomfortable, and strangely relatable figures in all of literature. Now, he's no hero. In fact, he's bitter, angry, and deeply isolated. But he's also a mirror, a reflection of what happens when a person becomes too trapped in their thoughts and loses touch with the emotional, chaotic side of being human. Before diving deeper, it's helpful to define the two forces at war inside the underground man, and often inside us too. On one side is logic, our ability to analyze, plan, reason, and control. It's the part of us that wants things to be efficient, productive, and orderly. On the other side is emotion, our instincts, desires, fears, and irrational cravings. This is the side that gets messy, makes mistakes, loves deeply, and feels joy, sadness, or rage without needing a reason. The underground man is torn between these two. He's incredibly intelligent and analytical, but he's also deeply emotional and unpredictable, and rather than balancing the two, he fights a war within himself, one that leaves him lonely and confused. But what makes him unforgettable is that he often chooses to hurt himself, not because he doesn't know better, but to prove that he's free. Free from logic, free from the cold calculations of society. At one point, he refuses medical help for a liver problem, not because he thinks he'll get better on his own, but because he wants to prove that even his suffering belongs to him. He's rebelling, not against the world, but against the idea that we should live like machines, always doing what's rational, what's best, what's efficient. And that rebellion feels even more relevant today. In our modern lives, we've optimized everything: our food, sleep, work, even happiness. We track steps, monitor heart rates, schedule every minute, and consume endless productivity advice. On the surface, it all looks controlled, clean, and efficient. But beneath that, rates of depression, anxiety, and burnout are rising. Why? Because we've forgotten something essential. We're not machines. Life isn't a formula. People aren't predictable. We mess up, lash out, stay in unhealthy relationships, and want things that don't make logical sense. Not because we're broken, but because we're human. The underground man knows this deeply. He's painfully aware, but doesn't know how to handle it. He longs for love, connection, and meaning. When a young woman named Lisa shows him genuine kindness, he almost allows himself to receive it. Almost. But fear, pride, and bitterness rise, and he ruins the moment, pushing her away. Not because he's cruel, but because he's terrified. Terrified of vulnerability, of being truly seen, and giving someone the power to hurt him. So he chooses control over connection, loneliness over love. This is why he feels so painfully modern. A man who thinks too much and feels too little, until it's too late. To be clear, Dostoevsky is not asking us to be like the underground man. He's warning us. He's warning us that a life ruled only by control and calculation may look neat from the outside, but inside it's empty. If we keep suppressing our emotions, if we avoid the chaos, vulnerability, and rawness, we lose the very things that make life meaningful. Love, joy, passion, sadness, wonder. These aren't weaknesses to fix, but signs that we're alive. But what does this mean for us? Simply that you don't have to make sense all the time. You don't need to be perfect or productive every single moment of every single day. It's okay to cry without reason, to feel lost or vulnerable. You don't owe everyone an explanation for how you feel. That's not weakness. That's honesty. Sometimes the bravest act is to just feel, even when it defies logic. To let go of control, stop overthinking, and simply be. That deep, irrational hope inside you, the broken part that still dreams, loves, and wants more, might just be the most genuine part of who you are. At the start of Notes from Underground, the man says, "I am a sick man. I am a spiteful man. I am an unattractive man." But beneath those harsh words is a quiet cry for freedom. Not from others, but the freedom to feel, to hurt, to be messy, to be fully human. That cry lives in all of us. Maybe being real doesn't mean being perfect. Maybe it means daring to be cracked open, to feel deeply even when it hurts, to act irrationally, to love blindly, and admit we don't have it all figured out. Because being real isn't about flawlessness. It's about being alive, wildly, imperfectly, beautifully alive. Number 3. Dare not afraid of falling apart. According to Dostoevsky, suffering is a part and parcel of extensive intelligence and a feeling heart. Dostoevsky saw something most of us try to avoid, that real change doesn't happen when life is going well, it happens when everything falls apart. When the version of yourself you've always believed in suddenly stops working. When you're left standing in the ruins without your usual roles or masks to hide behind. Those painful, confusing moments when your pride takes a hit, when all your old certainties disappear, that's when something deeper finally has room to show up. In Crime and Punishment, he tells the story of Raskolnikov, a young man who thinks he's above everyone else. He believes that some people are just so extraordinary, they're allowed to break the rules for the so-called greater good. So he kills someone just to prove it. At first, he tells himself it was necessary, for society, for progress, and he believes it. Tries to act like it doesn't affect him. But then, the guilt starts creeping in. And anxiety soon follows. Then, paranoia. And slowly, his confidence, that pride that he wore like armor, all begins to peel back and crack. He pulls away from people. He loses his mind. But Dostoevsky doesn't treat this as a failure. It's the start of something real. Because in that breakdown, Raskolnikov finally starts to feel. Not just guilt, but empathy, humility, regret. He sees that all the pride and arrogance he clung to wasn't strength at all. It was just a wall, one that kept him disconnected from others and from himself. That's what Dostoevsky forces us to ask. What if what we call sanity, being composed, rational, and in control, is really just fear in disguise? What if the person who seems calm and logical is actually numb? What if our so-called strength is just another mask? Raskolnikov's confidence at the beginning, all that intellect and cold logic, turns out to be its own prison. It's only when it falls apart that something honest starts to grow. And this isn't just a novel. Even if no one goes to the same extremes as Raskolnikov, we see it in real life all the time. People rarely change when things are easy. They change when something breaks. A breakup, a job loss, some failure that knocks the wind out of them. When the identity they've built starts to collapse, and they're forced to see what's hiding underneath. So, how do you stay real in a world full of pretending? Well, first, you stop running from the breakdown. You stop trying to fix it right away. When life knocks you down, don't rush to patch things up just to feel okay again. Sit with the discomfort. Listen to what it's trying to show you. Be brutally honest with yourself. Write it out. Talk to someone who'll actually listen. Crucially, let the collapse happen. Because what's falling apart might not be the real you. It might just be the version of you built on fear, on needing approval, and on trying to be perfect. And once that false self crumbles, something honest can finally come through. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone who's always done everything right. Good student, steady job, always responsible. On the surface, they look successful. People respect them. But inside, they're exhausted. Their whole sense of self is tied to achievement and control. Then one day, something happens and they lose the job. And suddenly, just like that, their identity starts to fall apart. They're no longer that person. They still smile and say, "I'm fine," but inside, they're crumbling. Sleepless nights, anxiety, trying to stay busy, but nothing works. At first, they do what most of us would. Panic. Update the resume, send out the job applications, try to stay productive. But under the surface, something deeper is happening. It's not just about the job. It's about everything they've been avoiding for years. The fear of not being good enough, the pressure to perform, the emptiness hiding beneath all the success. Eventually, the noise starts to die down. They stop running. They sit with the discomfort. Maybe they journal, not to fix anything, but just to feel. Maybe they open up to someone. And for the first time in years, They're actually honest. And slowly, something starts to shift. They stop pretending. They stop trying to prove themselves. They remember old passions, drawing, walking, spending time with a friend without an agenda. And for the first time in a long, long time, they feel alive. Not in a dramatic way, just a quiet, steady sense of being real. Losing that job felt like the end, but really, it was just the start of this chapter. It stripped away the performance. It made space for the truth. That's what Dostoevsky was pointing to. Healing isn't clean or comfortable. It's messy. It's chaotic. It can feel like you're losing your mind. But that mess, that's where the truth lives. So if you're in that space right now, if it feels like your life is falling apart, maybe it's not a breakdown. Maybe it's a breakthrough. Maybe you're not losing yourself. Maybe you're finally coming home. Number 4. Dare to love when it hurts. In our final quote from Dostoevsky for this video, he says, "What is hell? I maintain that it is the suffering of being unable to love." In the Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky gives us one of the rawest and most honest conversations in literature, a deep clash between two brothers, Ivan, the sharp-minded skeptic, and Alyosha, the quiet believer. Their argument goes beyond religion. It hits at something deeper. How do we keep going in a world that feels unfair? Is love still worth it when everything seems broken? Ivan is brilliant and painfully logical. He asks one of the hardest questions anyone can ask. If God exists, why do innocent children suffer? In the chapter Rebellion, he doesn't argue with abstract philosophy. He shares real stories of children being hurt, abused, and even tortured. And then he says something truly heartbreaking. No future paradise, no promise of heaven can ever make that okay. For Ivan, even one child's pain is too high a price. So he rejects it all. God, love, meaning. But that sharp, logical mind of his slowly becomes a trap. He can explain everything, but he can't feel anything. His need for perfect answers leaves no space for mystery, for forgiveness, for grace. And as the weight of that emptiness grows, his mind begins to crack. And that's when the devil shows up. Not a terrifying monster, but a petty, ridiculous little man, almost comical. He's a hallucination, yes, but also something deeper. A symbol. The devil isn't just madness. It's Ivan's own reflection. That part of him that became so obsessed with being right, he lost all connection to what's real. That devil represents what happens when we only live in our heads, when we try to make sense of a broken world through logic alone, when we care more about winning the argument than opening our hearts. Ivan didn't lose his mind because he doubted God or asked tough questions. Even Dostoevsky himself battled doubt his whole life. Ivan breaks down because he closed the door on love. Now look at his younger brother, Alyosha. On the surface, he's nothing special. He's quiet, gentle, even a bit shy. He's training in a monastery, learning from a kind elder named Father Zosima. He doesn't argue with people. He doesn't try to prove anything. He just listens, loves, helps. When tragedy hits their family, Alyosha doesn't try to explain it away with theories. He doesn't ask why the way Ivan does. He simply shows up, stays present, holds space. His strength is quiet, but real. To some, Alyosha might look like a fool. He doesn't try to fight the world's injustice like Ivan. He doesn't take on big systems or attack logic. But his courage lies elsewhere. In staying soft when life gets hard, in choosing love when bitterness would be easier. Alyosha believes that even in a world full of pain, kindness still matters. That love in any amount is never wasted. While Ivan, with all his intellect, falls apart, Alyosha holds people together. He doesn't preach or quote scripture, he just lives with love. He's not trying to fix people, he's just present, feeling with them, forgiving. Dostoevsky wants us to notice that you don't have to be a monk to live this way. You just have to stop letting your head get ahead of your heart. And with that, he's making a deep point. Being too clever can sometimes hurt your soul, while what looks like foolishness, like never giving up on love, might actually save it. He's not saying we should blindly follow religion or that having faith makes life simple. His characters show that believing in something can be messy and difficult. So what he's really saying is be kind, be truly human. And that means living with humility, caring for others, being willing to give, and trusting in something beyond just yourself. Today, we're often encouraged to be like Ivan, always doubting, always looking for flaws and hopefully flagging them up on social media. We're told softness is weakness, that belief is outdated and that love is naive. But that mindset can leave us feeling empty, like machines, efficient, but disconnected. But Alyosha shows a different path. One of listening, forgiving, and staying kind even when it's hard. In a world that laughs at gentleness, Dostoevsky calls it real strength. Dostoevsky wants us to be like Alyosha, not by saying the right things, but by simply being there for people. When someone's in pain, don't try to fix it right away. Just sit with them, listen, show that you care. And if you ever feel cold or numb, ask yourself if you're just trying to avoid feeling something real. Maybe what really matters isn't having all the answers, but choosing to love anyway, even when it's hard. The world might tell you that emotions, faith, or love are silly. But Dostoevsky says the real fool is the one who still believes in love when everybody else has given up. And that kind of foolishness, that's what makes life worth living. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to check out our full Philosophies for Life playlist. And for more videos to help you find success and happiness using beautiful philosophical wisdom, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching.